been separated. They've had a floor bed. They've had the whole room accessible to them. They're skilled in being able to fall asleep on their own, that they were biting one another. I got another question about independently falling asleep. Maybe they don't need to eat. Maybe they need to fall back asleep. Hey guys, it's Emma. Welcome to my channel. I am a mom of 2-year-old identical twin boys. They are currently 27 months old. And today I just wanted to sit down with you and chat and give you an update on how sleep is going with 2.5-year-old or almost 2.5-year-old twin toddlers. So if you are new, just finding me because you're maybe in a challenging point with sleep with your toddler or your twins, or whether you've been following along for a while now, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. So I am a mom to twin boys. We have been using the Montessori philosophy in our home since they were born, even before they were born. I have a background in Montessori education. If you're kind of curious about what that is, I'll just link a video of some tips here for you if you want to get started doing Montessori in your home, just in a few easy steps. But I've been sharing that on this channel since the boys were, well, I started my blog when they were about 6 months old, so I'll also link that below. But I've been sharing how we've been raising twins in our home, in a Montessori inspired home, for some time now. And it has ever been changing and evolving as they've grown, as I've grown, as now we've actually moved. We're in a new space now. So I just wanted to kind of tell you how things have changed, what's worked, what has not worked, some of our biggest challenges, kind of a little bit about my husband and I's, like, our philosophy on sleep with our children. And that's going to change for everyone. I know sleep is a very sensitive topic. Feel free to take what you like, forget the rest, do what's going to work for you. It's your home, it's your children, it's your sleep. And so this is just my experience of what we've done, what we've learned, and I know that it's going to change in the future as well. So I have already created a video, kind of our sleep journey in the first year with twins. And there I really talk about like what we did when they were newborns and how we transitioned to the floor bed. I'll link that video up here if you want to watch that, if that's the stage you're in. In this video, I'm really going to focus on what it's been like in the kind of the second year and into this third year of life with our boys. We have used a floor bed since they were very little. We went from a bassinet to a floor bed, and then we've been with floor beds since then. However, there was a stage when they were about 20 months old, 21 months old, that they were biting one another. And it no longer became very safe or easy to have them sleep in the same space with that freedom of movement to move around the room and fall asleep on their bed when they can. And I really think this wasn't an issue necessarily with a floor bed or a Montessori bedroom environment. I really think it was more the dynamic between two toddlers that was challenging. And so we tried to find ways to mediate this and remedy this. So I had this great idea to get a retractable gate to like divide our room into 2 rooms. I created a video about that. You can watch that. Spoiler alert, that did not work. They figured out how to get either above it or below it. They're very crafty, but we still had to find some way to keep them safe and separate, but within 1 bedroom, because we were limited to just 2 bedrooms in our home. What we did was we put one into a pack and play, and we'd have one on the floor bed, and we kind of would switch them off of who would be in the floor bed and who would be on the pack and play. Well, they grew up, they got more clever, more creative, and they would climb out of their pack and plays. That no longer was very secure. And so for a while we would put the one who couldn't climb out in there, and then the other one could roam around. But ultimately there were about 5 or 6 months there till we moved, quite honestly, that sleep went from them having floor beds and having this freedom to restricting it to one of them having this freedom, And then we ended up having them both in pack and plays. A viewer recommended this guava family pack and play. Essentially, it has like a zipper. It's a floor bed pack and play. So I ended up finding one of these on Facebook Marketplace, and we used that to kind of allow it to feel like a floor bed, but also have the security of them being separated. And it came with a really neat like blackout cover, like an elasticy, spandexy cover that would go over it. And so we would use that, and it would keep it nice and dark. It would keep it nice and cozy, and they were very separate from each other. So that's what we did for a couple of months. And I'm not like so proud, and I don't love this part of our journey, but I'm just being honest and transparent with what we had to do. And I had to have them separated. And even when one was in a pack and play and one wasn't, and they were like contained in that pack and play with the zipper, then the other one would unzip that one and get them out. And so you can imagine there was challenges in that. And so really, for me, at a certain age, the first year, it worked really well for them to sleep together. A little bit before they turned 2, that became much harder. And so what's been best now has been them being separated. Then we moved, and for the first couple of weeks, we kept them in their pack and plays that were covered, because it was just helped with the transition in the beginning to just keep things normal. And then at a certain point, I was like, okay, I think they're ready for going back to their floor beds with the freedom. And so we tried them on their floor beds with each other, and it was okay, but it required a lot of our intervention. And they would get into things like the diaper drawer or their clothes, and they would just dump everything out in the room. Now, had we never stopped using floor beds, I'm sure they would have adjusted and not done this, and we would have hit that phase earlier, because it felt like a lot of new freedom to them. I think that made it more challenging, and they were much more excited to have the room closed and be dark and all by themselves, and they got into a little bit more trouble. I mean, nothing bad, but they were not falling asleep. I think we did this for a few days, and it happened that we had like three days that they did not nap because they would not fall asleep. And then it would get too late, and then they couldn't nap. And the aftermath of that is challenging, because then you have very overtired toddlers. We were a little bit desperate. I was like, okay, we have to separate them. So this house has a 3rd bedroom. It's smaller, but it's a perfect size for a child's bedroom. So we took one of them and we cleaned that bedroom out. We had been using it just for storage. I cleared it all the way out, put a floor bed in there, and I separated them. And like immediately, 98% of all our problems disappeared, because they weren't distracted by one another. They actually could fall asleep, and they didn't have anyone either trying to keep them awake or wake them up if they did kind of doze off, or keep them distracted by playing. And so now it's probably been a month since we have separated them, and it is going so well. They sleep so much better. They sleep longer. They fall asleep faster. And it's just been really, really good. I think my favorite thing about the separation is that I'm learning their sleep capacity. When they were together, if one woke up at 6 a.m., the other one would wake up at 6 a.m. Even if they were still tired, they didn't have like the self-control or the knowledge to know like, oh, I want to keep sleeping. Their brother would wake them up, and then it was time to start the day. And we would have more challenges in our morning because of that, because they were still tired and needed more sleep. And so now by separating them, sometimes they'll wake up, at the same time, usually not though, or within 20 or 30 minutes. But there's been days one of them sleeps an extra hour or hour and a half, and that's just incredible. They'll do this at nap time too. Maybe it takes one of them 20 minutes longer to fall asleep, and so they wake up a little bit later than the other one. And what it's given me is one-on-one time with them. So in the morning when one of them wakes up, I get to go get them and hold them and cuddle them and read books to them. And I'm not that I'm not dealing with both of them, but if you're a twin mom watching this, you'll know that like they're together so much of the time. And so that time when you get to spend with just one of them is so special. And I've just been enjoying this stage a lot. And it's only possible because they're separated. I mean, maybe you'd have kids who sleep really hard and they don't wake each other up, and that would be great. But given the stage that we're in, they would wake each other up. And so, yeah, that has been what we've been doing. They've been separated. They've had a floor bed. They've had the whole room accessible to them. Last week I did a Montessori bedroom tour, so I'll link that here so you can see what that environment looks like. It's really simple: beds, bookshelf, dresser, shelf with toys, a chair. Everything that's available is accessible to them. And then I just put locks on the door. So I put locks on their door to their closet, which is where I use for more toy storage, which I don't want them getting into. And then I put a lock on the main door because I didn't want the power struggle of them getting out of their room and me having to tell them to go back in their room. They know that they can move about in that space wherever they want. And a lot of times, I would probably say half of the time, they do actually fall asleep by the door. And then I go in there and I move them back onto their bed. Other times, if they know that they're really tired, they don't even get out of their bed. And very rarely, which surprises me, they don't even really play with the toys in there, even though they have them. So it's been working really, really well. So on my video that showed their bedroom tour in our new home, I got a great question about how our sleeping environment has changed from 1-year-old to 2-year-old. And really the only change, we ended up getting 2 twin size beds, where before we had like a twin size bed and a twin and a crib size mattress. And so we just got 2 twin size beds so they could each have their own bed. Now at this point we still have 2 twin beds in that room and we have a twin in the other room just because they're separated. I anticipate that at some point we will move them back into their same room, especially if like another baby comes along and we need that as a nursery. But for now, I don't have any plans of trying to put them back in the same room. This is working really well. They're used to it, and why mess with something that's going well, especially with twins? Just let it be. So we're gonna keep riding this out as long as we can. Other things that would have changed in the environment, the dressing area. I mean, we upgraded our wardrobe to be like a little bigger so that it could accommodate more things. I guess I probably leave out more toys than I did when they were really little, just because they can manage having a little bit more out at a time. But other than that, the room in and of itself kind of still has those same areas: a chair, a sleeping area, dressing area, a play area. It's pretty much the same as it was when they were little. I got another question about independently falling asleep. So to answer this question, I'm gonna just go into a little bit of my like sleep philosophy and how we have thought about sleep in our home with our children. Now, don't like hold me to all this. I'm sure if I have more children and we're in a different season of life, I might change my mind or we might try new things. But with twins, with our experience, this is some of the things I've been thinking about in terms of sleep and independent sleep. You will get a range of opinions in the Montessori community. That's fine. People are entitled to whatever they want to do with sleep. You know, it's their life, it's their decisions, their children. And I think we obviously need to look at the needs of the child. So when my children were very little, when they were babies, they needed me all of the time, right? To eat, to fall asleep. They needed and relied on me very heavily. And I responded to those needs every time they came up. And then around 8 months, I noticed and I observed that they would wake up to eat, and they would eat for a minute and go back to sleep. And after waking up 6 or 7 times in the night, and realized that maybe they don't need to eat. Maybe they need to fall back asleep. And they were relying on me for that because that's what they've done their whole life, which is very reasonable. We did some light sleep training, and we helped them to learn that when you wake up, you fall back asleep. So when you wake up, you don't always eat. When you wake up, you fall back asleep. And that's still true today, right? If they wake up in the middle of the night, they go back to sleep. Now, the exceptions to this in our household are illness. Like if our kids are sick, we will go in there and we will sleep with them if they wake up and do whatever they need because they're not feeling well. And those are exceptions from sleep. So I don't let my children, be sad or upset or stay awake in the middle of the night if they're if they're sick. We will comfort them and give them everything that they need. But I was reading an article, I'll see if I can find it and link it below, but it was an older article written by a Montessori, and I don't remember who, but what stood out to me in it was this mom was talking about sleep. And she was saying how with her first child, she, always nursed her child to sleep, even until they were a little bit older, I think, probably at least to 2 years old. And her child depended and relied on her to be there to fall asleep. Even if she was tired at other times, her routine was that mom had to be there for me to sleep. And then she had another child, and I think she challenged this idea a little bit more, and realized that actually it is good, it is maybe, arguably, better for the child to be able to become aware of when they're tired and then go to sleep because they're tired. And they're not dependent on someone or something else to help to get them to sleep. Now, we know that sleep, right, at the end of the day, that is work done by the child. Nobody can make someone go to sleep. I can't make my children go to sleep. They have to be the ones to close their eyes and actually fall asleep. No matter how much support we give them or not, they still have to be the ones to actually fall asleep. And so I think this helped me a lot to not feel so guilty about not being with my kids the whole time they fall asleep and never leaving them. And I think they actually learned a very healthy skill. They're skilled in being able to fall asleep on their own. So we have our bedtime routine where we'll sit and we'll get in our jammies and change our diapers and brush our teeth and read books and do our prayers. And then we say goodnight, I love you, I kiss them on the head, and I leave. And we've done this for a long time now that I don't think it's surprising to them. It's not alarming. Sometimes they're still sad about it. They don't want us to leave. One of my sons, he's just like obsessed with books, and he would read 500 books probably if we would sit in there that long. And at a certain point, we have to say, like, this is the last one. And when we leave, he usually wants us to read another. And sometimes I'll just say, I have to go check on your brother. And I usually do. And then I leave and I shut the door. And then as we've made this transition, usually, like, if he starts crying immediately for a few minutes, I'm not going to go right back in there, because then we start the whole cycle back over. Well, it's hard to talk about my sleep philosophy a little bit, because I know there's probably judgment and opinions out there that totally disagree with me. And you know what? That's okay. This is how we've done it, and it gives us some really good boundaries in our household around sleep, I think. There's times where they'll be sad and it sounds like something's wrong. And there's been times we've gone up there where they've like unzipped their pajamas and they're upset about that. Or like their water bottle straw wasn't working or whatever. So I can kind of tell when it sounds like they need something versus they're just sad because they don't want me to go. And usually it just lasts for a few minutes. Sometimes it doesn't at all. And one of my sons is a little bit more sensitive than the other one. So I would say he sometimes will cry a little bit more when we leave the room than the other one does. And one of my sons usually never does, he's just like, all right, bye. And we leave. And then I might give it a few minutes. So if they are still sad, maybe after 5 minutes, I'll go up there. I find that we have to do this like retraining when we've come back from like visiting family or something where they maybe aren't used to being in their room, and so there's sometimes an adjustment period. Ultimately, our goal is that they get themselves to sleep, and I know that they can do that independently. And so I love Dr. Montessori's quote that any help that is not necessary is a hindrance. And I strongly believe that children can learn to put themselves to sleep. Now, whether or not you want your child to put themselves to sleep, that's up for you to decide. I do. I want my children to be able to put themselves to sleep, and I don't want to lay there with them to get them to sleep. I don't know if you've ever slept with a toddler, but it's a little obnoxious. They move and twist and turn. And I think that's a skill that they can learn. and they're really good at it, and I'm grateful. But it is because we've also been pretty consistent with that expectation that they do put themselves to sleep. Okay, so I talked about our sleep routine now, kind of my sleep philosophy, the environment. The biggest challenge really is just when they're together. That makes it really hard. I already said this, but it instantly solved our problems. They would fall asleep, and it was great. It allowed me to execute and use the Montessori philosophy the way that it's intended with one child. It is very challenging with toddlers to offer floor beds with twins and toddlers without pulling your hair out and losing your mind. It's challenging. But with one child, it is very doable in my experience, that it has gone very, very well. Especially if your child's getting out of their crib or out of their pack and play or whatever, go to a floor bed. It's great. That's really what a bed is anyways. It's just a bed low to the ground. Okay, you guys, well, I think that's everything on my sleep update. If you have any questions or something was unclear, just drop those into the comment section below. I also have my email address listed in the description box below if you want to send me any more questions for maybe a further video, if I need to expand more. But anyways, so good to spend more time with you. As always, I will see you next Friday for another Montessori inspired video. All right, you guys, have a great day. Bye.